Hello, welcome to Through Lucy's Lens, weekly-ish videos where I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you will find them interesting too. So I'm still at the Black Country Museum, but I have been here so many times and I have never ever seen this before. And I'm so excited to show it to you. I'm doing this little voiceover after I've come out, a little bit puffy-eyed because it's that good. It's a representation of some apartments set in 1939, right on the cusp of the Second World War. And they're just wonderful. So that is what we're going to do today. So let's go and find these little hidden apartments here at the Black Country Museum set in the late 1930s. Come on, let's go. To find this hidden gem at the museum, we have to start at the 1930s High Street. This is a set of 4 buildings that originally stood on Birmingham Street in Oldbury and were originally built between 1850 and 1875. They were moved here brick by brick and erected as they would have been in the 1930s, with shops on the front and living accommodation above the shops. This can be accessed from the back of the property. This is where we need to head through the alleyway to access these lovely flats. Here you'll find a building that looks like a Victorian terraced house, because originally this is what it would have been. But here they've recreated the rooms to imagine how the rooms would have looked during the 1930s for a working class family making the most of what would have been by now a damp, old-fashioned shell in which to make a home. First we enter the kitchen and straight away we can see that gone is the labour-intensive blackened range, and that's replaced by a gas or electric stove. The one here was made locally in Tipton, and although the range is gone, the new stove still performs some of the same duties, such as heating water or to heat the iron. I still remember my nan spitting on an iron like this to make sure if it was hot enough to iron out the creases. While the middle classes, many of whom had already invested in electrical lighting for their homes, they were keen to get their hands on the new appliances such as toasters or fridges. But by 1939, only 8% of British households owned an electric cooker. This kitchen also has a small fridge, but with no electricity supply or reliable electricity supply. It was essentially a metal cool box with the food kept cold using blocks of ice. In the cold British winters, I suspect no ice was necessary. Most people in Britain did not have a fridge in the sense we know today until the 1950s or even 1960s. Fresh meat would be purchased daily and eaten on the same day. Or for longevity, meat might be turned into stews or soups that could be kept over several days on the stove. Little did the people know who lived here in 1939 that within a year their life would be turned upside down and their food would be rationed. The kitchen is plumbed in with a cold water supply and painted in popular colours from the time. Light blue was a fashionable colour for a kitchen, as were various shades of green and cream. The 1930s were a time when even poorer families made steps to modernise their homes, but we can still see the Victorian scrubbed wood kitchen table and quarry tile flooring with a deep Belfast sink. There was no washing machine, and the weekly wash might be done here in the kitchen using the sink and a portable tub and dolly. Or sometimes housewives would visit their local communal wash house, which was often part of the local swimming baths. And here they would wash their laundry in large industrial washers. I would actually love to do a video about one of these wash houses, so if any of you know of one preserved or hidden at the back of your local Victorian swimming baths, please do let me know. As I ventured up the stairs, which honestly I wasn't sure if I was allowed to do, I couldn't believe what was hidden up here. The most marvellous living room styled as it would have been in 1939. You can see that it's not fancy or sparkly. The furniture is worn and the floor is lino. But just look at it. I think I left a piece of my heart in this room. This room was particularly moving to me because when I was about 7, we moved into a 1930s house that hadn't been changed since the original occupiers had lived there. The elderly couple had passed away, and at just age 7, I moved into a 1930s time capsule. This room took me back there in a way I really wasn't expecting. The wallpaper, the floor, the smell and the furniture was like stepping back into that space. The Victorian range has been replaced by a modern tiled fireplace with sleek Art Deco shaping. Millions of these fireplaces, deemed ugly by the 1980s, were ripped out of 1930s semi-detached housing all over the UK to fester on tips as rubble. The one from our own house, sadly, included. The fire here still would have been coal, someone bringing up the coal in the bucket to light a fire every day. Music plays softly from the wireless. Three million households in Britain had a radio set in 1930, and by 1939 the figure had tripled, with the likelihood that 75% of households in Britain had a radio or wireless in their home. The radio provided entertainment, news, communication and comfort in an age before the television. On the 1st of September 1939, the BBC started to broadcast the BBC Home Service to provide radio throughout World War II. 20 million people tuned into the Home Service to listen to Winston Churchill's speech on the 1st of October 1939. Next door to this living room, there are 2 simple bedrooms. This is unusual for the Black Country Museum, as many of their buildings do not have upstairs access, and I was really pleased to see this. As always, it just seems as if someone's popped out to the shops with their scant personal belongings scattered around the room. The thick eiderdown and hot water bottle made me feel as if I wanted to climb in for a cosy snooze on this cold day. You can see in the bedrooms there's less of an upgrade to modern times, with the old Victorian cast iron fireplace and bed still in place with no indoor bathroom facilities. Because of this, a daily wash, brush up and shave would have been performed at a washstand, although I can imagine Dad still preferred to have a shave in the relative peace of the kitchen sink. Next, we step across the threshold above the shop next door, and this is another living room. These rooms would not have been one large house. Each would have contained a living room, 1 bedroom and a kitchen downstairs. This room is displayed more as a whole living space, with a dining table set with a fancy dinner set fashionable in the 1930s. I imagine that a type of set like this would have been a wedding present, as it's quite a fancy set for this flat. I imagined a newly married couple here, starting out life, and thought about how their lives were about to be turned upside down with the 5 years of war just to come. This room was darker than the others, but I could see there was a standing lamp and electric switches, and the relaxing hum of the radio continued. Down the stairs and we go into the back room of one of the shops on the high street. This is the workshop of Gripton's radio shop. Gripton's is an Aladdin's cave of radio equipment from the 1930s, all restored and gleaming, harking back to a time when expensive items such as wirelesses and radios were made to be fixed if they broke. You could take in your broken radio equipment to a workshop like this, where it could be fixed to live for another day. I'll leave you to have a look around the workshop, and then we'll go around to the front of the shop to look inside and take a look at some of the other shops on the 1930s high street too. So this is Gripton's radio shop, and it's set in 1935. Gripton's would have sold second-hand radio sets taken in part exchange for new ones. Many manufacturers were bringing out a new model every single year, so there would have been plenty of trade-ins available as the owners upgraded to the latest model, or cheaper, older models were available to those with less spending power. The museum's research suggests that Gripton's only dealt with wireless sets. They would have also sold a variety of mains and also battery radios, as many customers in parts of the Black Country would still not have had access to connected mains electricity by 1939. Accordingly, the shop has several battery sets on display, as well as a wide variety of HT batteries and accumulators. What I really love about this shop is that many of the pieces on display here were donated by radio enthusiasts from across the UK for the museum to preserve and keep for future generations. The next shop I want to show you is Preedy's Tobacconists. Alfred Preedy was born in 1840 and went on to have not only many tobacconist shops all over Birmingham and the Black Country, but also imported his own tobacco to provide their own range of wholesale pipe and rolling tobacco for the masses. Although these days we know the health dangers of smoking, in the 1930s, by 1939, 80% of the British male population smoked tobacco. In the 1930s, advertisers saw a gap in the market because it was still unusual for women to smoke. They saw an opportunity to advertise to women, making smoking fashionable, glamorous, and advertising several health benefits to the nerves. They even went so far as to develop a range of cigarettes more appealing to females, with feminine packaging and smaller cigarettes. It worked, and by 1939, on the eve of World War II, the annual average per capita consumption amongst women aged 15 and above had reached 500 cigarettes per year. Britain was hooked on tobacco, and 1962 marks the height of cigarette consumption in the United Kingdom. In 1962, over 70% of British men and 40% of British women smoked tobacco. And didn't we just smoke everywhere? Even as an 80s baby, I remember people smoking on the bus, on aeroplanes, and even in doctors' and hospital waiting rooms. Today, this statistic has fallen dramatically, and Preedy's no longer exists, most of the stores closing by the early 1980s. Tobacconists, however, will always be a special place for me, and I'm really glad they have one here. My own dad smoked small Hamlet cigars, and I used to love going in with him to the Tobacconist, the warm, sweet smell of tobacco and the rows of gleaming pipes and paraphernalia. The next stop for us is A. Harthill Motorcycles. Harthill's motorcycle shop was originally located in Mount Pleasant, Bilston, and opened in 1937. It mainly sold second-hand motorcycles to cater to the local community, where the purchase of a brand new bike would have been out of reach. They also sold bicycles, push bikes, and hire purchase facilities were provided. The sale of spares and provision for repairs completed the service provided here, offering a comprehensive and local service for the motorcycle and bicycle enthusiast. I'm really sorry I couldn't film more footage inside here, but with the popularity of these beautiful bikes, it's always really busy. And you know my number one rule is to never get in the way of somebody else enjoying their well-earned day out.
And if you've noticed, they're all single stripes to lower his profile. Gives you an extra 2 more now. I think just round the corner there should be a photograph of a rider doing that. Could be just enough to get when you're
Let's end our trip to the 1930s at the chip shop, or the chippy. As you are aware, most living museums have their own chip shop, and there's a bit of a battle for the best chips, but the ones here at the Black Country Museum really are busting, my friend. Fried in beef fat the traditional way, they're delicious and incredibly rich actually to my modern palate. Hobbs once stood in Dudley town centre, serving up honest, traditional fish and chips to the local community until it closed in 2006. It's recreated here as it would have been in around 1935, with an original frying range, tiled walls and a simple menu. To the shock of the person in front of me, no, they do not serve tomato ketchup. As always, I hope you enjoyed your visit back to the 1930s with me today. Please do share your own memories in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe and catch up with my other films. It really helps me with the channel.